The Siege of Constantinople in 1453 was a pivotal event that marked the fall of the Byzantine Empire and the rise of the Ottoman Turks. The fall of Constantinople had profound consequences for Europe and the Middle East, marking the end of the Byzantine Empire, which had survived for over 1,000 years. Constantinople was placed under siege by Sultan Mehmed II of the Ottoman Empire on the 29th of May, 1453. The Ottoman Empire was Islamic, and Constantinople was ruled by the Christian Byzantine Empire. Constantinople was the ultimate Christian metropolis since the earliest years of the Islamic Empire, and it had been the ultimate prize. The Islamic prophet Muhammad had once said that a great commander would one day conquer Constantinople, and Mehmed acted on that prophecy. The city was defended by the massive Theodosian walls, which stood 12 meters high. The city's celebrated walls were a triple row of fortifications built during the reign of Theodosius II, which protected the land side of the peninsula occupied by the city. Attackers first faced a 20-meter wide and 7-meter deep ditch, which could be flooded with water fed from pipes when required. Behind that was an outer wall that had a patrol track to oversee the moat. Behind this was a second wall which had regular towers and an interior terrace to provide a firing platform to shoot down on any enemy forces attacking the moat and first wall. Then, behind that wall was a third and larger inner wall. This final defense was almost 5 meters thick, 12 meters high, and presented to the enemy 96 projecting towers. Each tower was placed around 70 meters distant from the other and reached a height of 20 meters. The towers, either square or octagonal, could hold up to 3 artillery machines. The towers were placed on the middle wall so as not to block the firing possibilities from the towers of the inner wall. The distance between the outer ditch and inner wall was 60 meters, while the height difference was 30 meters. To take Constantinople, an army would then need to attack by both land and sea, but all attempts failed no matter who tried and no matter what weapons and siege engines they launched at the city. The crushing of the Crusader army at Varna in 1444 CE meant that the Byzantines were now on their own. No significant help could be expected from the West, where the popes were already unimpressed with the Byzantines' unwillingness to form a union of the church and accept their supremacy. The people of the city could only stock up on food and arms and hope their defenses would save them yet again. The defending army was composed of fewer than 5,000 men, not a sufficient number to adequately cover the length of the city's walls, some 19 kilometers in total. Worse still, the once great Byzantine navy now consisted of a mere 26 ships, and most of those belonged to the Italian colonists of the city. The Byzantines were hopelessly outnumbered in men, ships, and weapons. The Byzantine emperor at the time of the attack was Constantine XI, and he took personal charge of the defense along with such notable military figures as Lucas Notaras and the Genoese siege expert Giovanni Giustiniani. The Byzantines had catapults and Greek fire, the highly inflammable liquid that could be sprayed under pressure from ships or walls to torch an enemy. Mehmed II had one thing that previous besiegers of Constantinople lacked: cannons. The Byzantines had first option on the cannons as they had been offered them by their Hungarian engineer named Urban, but Constantine could not meet his asking price. Urban then peddled his expertise to the Sultan, and Mehmed showed more interest and offered him 4 times what he was asking. These fearsome weapons were put to good use in November 1452 CE, when a Venetian ship, disobeying a ban on traffic, was blown out of the water as it sailed down the Bosphorus. The captain of the vessel survived, but was captured, decapitated, and then impaled on a stake. The Ottoman army numbered between 60,000 to 80,000 men. When the army assembled at the city walls of Constantinople on the 2nd of April 1453 CE, the Byzantines got their first glimpse of Mehmed's cannons. The largest was 9 meters long with a gaping mouth 1 meter across. Already tested, it could fire a ball weighing 500 kilograms over 1.5 kilometers. The cannon was so large that it took a long time to load and cool it, so that it could only be fired 7 times a day. Still, the Ottomans had plenty of smaller cannons, each capable of firing over 100 times a day. On the 5th of April, Mehmed sent a demand for immediate surrender to the Byzantine Emperor, but received no reply. On the 6th of April, the attack began. The Theodosian walls were relentlessly blasted, chunk by chunk, into rubble. The defenders could do no more than fire back with their own smaller cannons by day, hold off the attackers where the cannons had punched the biggest holes, and try and repair those gaps each night as best they could, using rocks, barrels, and anything else they could get their hands on. The resulting rubble piles absorbed the cannon shot better than fixed walls, but eventually one of the infantry assaults would surely get through. The onslaught went on for 6 weeks, but there was some effective resistance. The Ottoman attack on the boom, which blocked the city's harbor, was repelled, as were several direct assaults on the land walls. On the 20th of April, miraculously, 3 Genoese ships sent by the Pope and a ship carrying vital grain sent by Alfonso of Aragon managed to break through the Ottoman naval blockade and reach the defenders. Mehmed, infuriated, then got around the harbor boom by building a railed road via which 70 of his ships, loaded onto carts pulled by oxen, could be launched into the waters of the Golden Horn. The Ottomans then built a pontoon and fixed cannons to it so that they could now attack any part of the city from the seaside, not just the land. The defenders now struggled to station men where they were needed, especially along the structurally weaker sea walls. Mehmed offered Constantine a deal: pay tribute and he would withdraw. The emperor refused, and Mehmed gave the news to his men that now, when the city fell, as surely it would, they could plunder whatever they wished from one of the richest cities in the world. Mehmed launched a massive go-for-broke, throw-everything-at-them assault at dawn on the 29th of May. First to be sent in after the usual cannon barrage was the second-rate troops. Then a second wave was launched with better-armed troops, and finally, a third wave attacked the walls, this time composed of the Janissaries, the well-trained and highly determined elite of Mehmed's army. It was during this third wave that disaster struck the Byzantines, who by now were forced to employ women and children to defend the walls. Some fool had left the small Kirkaporta gate in the land walls open, and the Janissaries did not hesitate in using it. They climbed to the top of the wall and raised the Ottoman flag. Then they worked their way around to the main gate and allowed their comrades to flood into the city. Chaos now ensued, with some of the defenders maintaining their discipline and meeting the enemy, while others rushed back to their homes to defend their own families. It is at this point that Constantine was killed in the action, most likely near the gate of St. Romanos. The emperor could have fled the city days before, but he chose to stay with his people, and a legend soon grew up that he had not died at all, but instead, he had been magically encased in marble and buried beneath the city, which he would, one day, return to rule again. Meanwhile, the rape, pillage, and destruction began. Many of the city's inhabitants committed suicide rather than be subject to the horrors of capture and slavery. Perhaps 4,000 were killed outright, and over 50,000 were shipped off as slaves. Many sought refuge in churches and barricaded themselves in, including inside the Hagia Sophia. But these were obvious targets for their treasures, and after they were looted for their gems and precious metals, the buildings and their priceless icons were smashed. Uncountable art treasures were lost, books were burned, and anything with a Christian message was hacked to pieces, including frescoes and mosaics. In the afternoon, Mehmed entered the city himself, called an end to the pillaging, and declared that the Hagia Sophia church be immediately converted into a mosque. It was a powerful statement that the city's role as a bastion of Christianity for 12 centuries was now over. Mehmed then rounded up the most important survivors from the city's nobility and executed them.